Paulson Adebo is out. What does that do to the secondary going forward?
Well, we have said a number of times that's the one position where they could most afford an injury, quote unquote, or most afford, if they were going to trade a player or something like that, because they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round. And he's shown flashes of being really good. And obviously Alontae Taylor has been arguably the defensive MVP this season and been playing great. Now Alontae Taylor is going to go from playing 80% of the snaps or whatever it is to 100% of the snaps. Dennis Allen even laid it out, which is what we would have guessed, that Alontae will start on the outside when they're in base. When they're in nickel, Alontae will go back to nickel, but when they're in base, he'll be on the field for every snap. And I feel good about that. I feel like going from Adebo to Alontae is not the way Adebo was playing this year and the way Alontae was playing this year. It's not a downgrade. And then now Kool-Aid McKinstry becomes something of a question mark, but I kind of like him being on the outside. I'd have a bigger question mark on him playing on the inside. I think that's absorbable. I mean, you can't absorb 11 injuries all at once on your team. Paulson Adebo was playing great last year, good but inconsistent this year. So I'm not going to dismiss it, but I feel better about their backup plan there than anywhere else on the roster.
Yeah, I agree with you. The 1-for-1, I'm not worried about it. Is the sum of the three now better or worse than the other? Possibly. I think that's all I'm kind of finding out what Kool-Aid can do. Yeah. The thing that I think is interesting about this is that, obviously last season they were willing to trade Marshawn. Marshawn was willing to get traded. If you come back to it at the end of the season and you're still willing to get rid of him and he's still willing to go, at least now you're going to know what you're dealing with going into the future. You aren't making a blind deal at this point, because you're going to see Alontae on the outside and you're going to see Kool-Aid on the outside. And if you got rid of Lattimore, those presumably would be their positions, and you go look for a slot cornerback. So you're going to know exactly what you're holding in your hand at the end of this. And I think there's value in having that information, because if they play great, definitely reallocate your resources somewhere. You need all kinds of defensive linemen. You need guys at safety, probably. You need linebackers. You need offensive linemen. These are high-value positions. If you can cash out on a cornerback because you're good enough there and move that asset somewhere else, and then bring in your depth, because you do a really good job of scouting backup cornerbacks. That's one thing you really have done well as an organization. So if you can kind of fill that out cheap and maybe not go cheap at these other positions and just reallocate the deck a little bit, I think that helps. But you're definitely more emboldened to make that move if you know that you have the two guys there, and then all of a sudden he becomes a luxury. And then you're also dealing from a position of strength then at that point, because you have, so it's not necessarily so much that you have to do this, it's something you want to do. And I think that changes negotiations a little bit. So it's a big loss. So you definitely, now you're one injury away from getting into something deeper. And then Marshawn already had the hamstring. Sure. I'm high on Rico Payton's potential, but
that would be a much bigger.
Don't feel great about that.